and you can tell me what it is.
Okay.
All right, we are on. Robin.
Yes.
What's today's topics?
Today's topic is ethics, accountability, and transparency.
Let's go.
And I know between you and me, that's probably two of our favorite conversations, ourselves and this.
It seems like a great way to prompt FOIA requests from the county. So you start talking about transparency.
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like with everything that's happening, especially with the elections locally, I don't want to get into national politics, but for our local elections, I feel like we've really had an interesting turnaround the last couple of months between the primaries when the city elections took place and now with the county. And I feel like people are demanding it, and yet I'm not 100% sure how you get it. So, case in point.
It's a caliber of the people who are in charge, man. It's the character of who's in the seat.
Absolutely. But as you and I have gone head to head, you know, not always on the same page. And I don't think everybody should be of the same mindset. You would need to have the same goal. How you get there needs to probably look a little bit different because everybody brings something to the table. And you can't have something where, you know, your view is the only view because there needs to be, you know, it's that saying that it takes many threads and many fabrics to make up a really great cloth. I know I'm doing that statement a total disservice at this moment, but if you don't have people with differing ideas, you'll never get to where the best possible place is.
True. Yeah.
So, I mean, you and I have had conversations about development. Yeah. So even talking about ethics and development and transparency, just talking about like the Costco situation, when we had our hearings with the city, it was said by a former commissioner, oh, I got so many emails where people were just so pro Costco.
And for anybody who doesn't know who you are in your history with the city.
Oh, yeah, we should probably start over.
Robin Cartwright.
Yeah. So I sued the city of Stuart.
Yes.
Yeah. I sued the city of Stuart as the intervener who originally applied was not eligible because she literally lived across the street. But having met certain criteria to be somebody who could sue, I did sue on behalf of my community. And to be totally clear for everybody watching, I won. My community won. And the governor, after taking a $100,000 donation from the developer, quickly overturned that decision. And so it became an issue of would I appeal with the new state legislature rules about density and what could be built where and, you know, who's responsible for what money and what lawsuit came into effect. And ultimately, it was just about the accountability of my community leaders, my commission, what they would do. That's really what this fight was about. And unfortunately, I think my community got the short end of the stick when it's all said and done. But, you know, here we are.
I do, you know, a lot of credit to you because there was a lot of people that were upset about Costco.
And it was never about Costco. I mean, that's what I think people need to know. We actually presented to the developer and to the city, hey, here's a way to keep Costco. Just get rid of all this other stuff that's in it, you know, keep some of the wetlands, make Costco a little bit smaller, do a few less apartments. And we were basically told to go pound sand.
But what I was going to say is whether or not somebody agreed with your position on if 378 apartments was appropriate or wetlands or Costco or whatever, from a person, you know, in this community standing up for what you believe is right, I think it's incredible that because a lot of people were involved in the resistance to that project.
Right.
But you took on the responsibility of taking that forward.
Yeah.
And that's wild. A lot of people talk big and they get upset and maybe they write a sign or, you know, you should do this or you should sue. To actually be the one that says, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll take it. And you kept all the way through it. That's wild to me because very few humans have that. Whether you agree with somebody agrees with you or not, to have that fortitude.
Well, and it goes back to the accountability and transparency piece because, like I said, in those meetings that we had, one of the commissioners said very clearly, I've gotten nothing but pro emails. Well, we did a public records request and it was split 50-50. And similarly, what we're seeing with the Brightline project, some arguments were very emotional, like what's in it for me. And some arguments were very logically based and objectively based. And that's really where you need to make your decision, is in the objective, logic based format, because of what's going to happen in the long term. You know, it's the accountability piece from the city and the county, what happens in the long run, but also the transparency piece of, if we got these emails, we should share all of them. It should not be in the presentation that is created by city staff in partnership with the developer. Look at all of these wonderful things that are being said. You should also present, here's the issue that we could potentially face. Here's the problem that we may have coming before us. Here's something that we haven't thought about that a concerned citizen raised, and we need to seriously consider this. None of those are ever said. I mean, you sit on the commission, you know, when city staff gets up to present on behalf of a developer and then the developer speaks, it is always sunshine and roses, right? Everything is great and everything's going to be wonderful and tax revenue is going to be generated and everything is so wonderful. Yes. And instead of it being a thoughtful conversation of what's the other side of this, there is no transparency when it comes to who's objecting, who's saying anything negative, who brings up a point that's different than mine. And so it's been an interesting learning experience the last 4 years, and it has become my sole focus, or one of my sole things that I solely focus on, is accountability, ethics, and transparency.
I do. I agree that that's sort of, as far as I know you, who you are. You know, you don't seem too dogmatic about particular positions. You have your perspective and what you think, but where I've seen some people even involved in, you know, the political realm, or they might sit in one of those seats, they're very dogmatic, you know, and the ends justify the means.
Right.
I've noticed, at least in my interacting with you, is making sure that it's clean and clear, and wherever we come to, we come to.
Well, and you know,
that's not how it usually works, right, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. But I mean, there are things that I don't agree with, like the certain things that the commission is going to vote to pursue, but it's not about what I agree with. Is it what's best for my community?
Right.
And I feel like we missed an opportunity I'm grateful that the city of Stuart voted the way that they did this last year. I feel like in the county, with regard
to Brightline or the elections,
with the commissions, with the elections, I feel like we have people who are a little more thoughtful and who've kind of watched the fight from the sidelines, and took it all in and figured out where they could add value, but also where the city commission was lacking some representation in thought.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. And I feel like the county missed an opportunity, good, bad, or indifferent, my opinion, for somebody who brought a different perspective to sit in one of the commission seats. I mean, I'll just say his name, Mike Circus. I feel like, you know, Mike and I do not agree on a number of things ideologically, but when it comes to the best interest of fiscal responsibility, I feel like we're lacking that sometimes on our county commission. And I feel like that is a value that he could have added, and a voice that we so desperately need with everything that's happening with our budgets.
True. Yeah, it does seem like, I don't want to dog the county too bad.
No, I don't either. But I'm just saying, from a comparison perspective of who sits on the dais currently.
Right.
It's kind of like when you hire people for a company, you don't hire people just like you. What's the purpose? You're never going to get anybody. I mean, there are people that do that because they like to have their, you know, skirts fluffed, and everybody wants to be told how great they are. But when you hire people who are identical to how you are,
it's not good.
It's not good. You don't bring an opposing viewpoint. And again, opposing doesn't mean conflict. Opposing means just a different way to think about things.
But if character is the least common denominator across people, and like you're saying, transparency, then we should be able to weigh it all out, right? Can we go...
I mean, theoretically.
Full in on what the implications of this are, full in on the implications, see if there's some kind of compromise, or we got to go this way, you know, and fully entertain how this could look, instead of crowbarring in this.
I don't know. I feel like, you know, I know you guys just dealt with the zoning in progress, and
we're still in it, technically,
right. Yeah. And I know we hear a lot of developers and a lot of city staff and county staff say, oh, but property rights. And I feel like when we use this catch-all caveat of an excuse, we are not looking at what about the community rights. Like when a developer buys a piece of property, they know what they're buying. It's not like it's a surprise. Like,
Right.
oh, this was approved for low density residential. Why can I not build an airport here? So it's those pieces of transparency and accountability that I feel like we're missing. Like if you bought this and you knew what you were buying, it is not the commission's job to put your square peg of a project into a round hole on a land use map.
And it's a valid and very important point, property rights. But
Absolutely.
It's not just the property rights of a developer.
No.
It's, in the city's case, the property rights of the other 20,000 people who will be interfacing with the traffic caused by that project, the drainage.
Right. The stormwater, the river that's affected.
Right.
I mean, it's not a siloed decision.
Right.
And I feel like some of the things, again, that goes back to that transparency.
And those 20,000 people can't necessarily be there, or they're not able to be there, or, they've got families they're working. Your job as the 5 people up there is to represent them.
Right.
And sometimes it feels more like the 5 people up there are counsel for the developer.
Right. It is definitely ad hoc staff.
Wait a second.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because I feel like sometimes when development staff, I'm not development staff, obviously, but I do question sometimes the directive that they get at the city and the county and who is making the recommendation that they present what they present. Does that make sense? Is that between the lines enough?
Yeah. I'm in the city. I'm happy with who we have in there now. I really like Jody and I really like Chris, but
I think staff is very nice.
But without being too hard on previous staff, I would just say I'm really happy with who we have now.
I agree. But but I feel like when they present things in a certain way, it doesn't give the commission a lot of, so.
Go into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this better than I, when staff comes up and makes a presentation for development, they say staff recommends. Why is staff recommending? So if you're asking for a land use change, so for those that don't know, a land use change is the first step in changing what the land is actually approved for in the simplest of terms. So when they say staff recommends, are they not doing the work of the developer by saying staff recommends? And you and I have had conversations where we've talked about there are other counties where staff does not recommend. Staff basically says, here are your options.
I've not had a meeting I've been to where staff didn't recommend approval.
Exactly.
So it either doesn't mean anything that staff recommends.
Why even have a land use map?
Yeah. Really, I think from their perspective, it's the developer has met all of the legal requirements. They've met the legal requirements if the land use is approved. Right. They've gone through this application. Really, they've filled out their application properly. Right. Would be the way to say it. Right. That's what staff recommends equals. And then they'll go through what's, varying from it, but it's really up to your advisory boards and then ultimately your commission. Right. To negotiate that
But how do you as a commission know what you're allowed to do if the staff is recommending? So if staff doesn't say to you, Commissioner Collins, here are your 4 options. You can approve with conditions, you can deny, or you can deny with conditions. If they're not giving you those options, how do you feel best equipped to make a decision that's best for the community if staff is only recommending? Yeah.
It's kind of an awkward gray area though. Like staff sees, I can't want to speak for the people, our staff, but in my talking to them, they perceive their job as making sure, that this application is correct.
Absolutely.
And then you have your attorney who can tell you what you can legally do. Right. And so there's this kind of a blind spot there where I guess your commission should be the ones to say, this is what's possible. This is what we could do here. What do you think? Yeah. But it would be nice to have sort of a menu of options, what the repercussions would be if we go this way or that way. And especially when there's neighborhoods or neighbors that have something against the project. So if staff is fully recommending something and and it's not until public comment that you're hearing about these potential issues,
That's the lack of transparency that I'm talking about, because chances are they have emailed you or city staff to say,
that is true.
hey, here's what's up. And yet you never see that in a presentation.
You're right. That should be part of the presentation.
It absolutely should be part of the presentation. And it's kind of like when we have, talking about property rights, like the Airbnb situation that we have in the county right now. There is actually one county I found in the state of Florida that has restricted where Airbnbs are permitted.
It came up today in the zip, so I'm curious what do you know about that?
About Airbnbs?
Limiting them.
I have 2 of them in my neighborhood.
Because the state apparently preempts us entirely from talking to our attorney and
no,
city
they
manager.
had to.
So how do you do it?
What I read was there is one county and they had to designate a very, very specific area. Like it couldn't be the whole county.
It was a historic district or something.
Something like that, or it was more family based, and it had to do with the potential noise issues that could occur. But it was an interesting article to read because it did not infringe upon property rights. Because again, if you're an investor coming in to buy this property, you know what's permitted. You know if you're allowed to have an Airbnb there. But there are so many, like you have to be registered with the state. You also have to be registered with the county. And there's a lot of Airbnbs operating that are not operating fully as they should. And, the one on Isla Street is the one that is the best example of that, because we have the whole issue where they basically, again, it goes back to the ethics, accountability, and transparency, where it was documented that they were doing work without a permit, and then it was listed as an Airbnb, and when the city was contacted about it, just kind of, shrugged their shoulders about, and then, all the emails that you find as public records about what's happening really with that property, which could be a whole podcast in and of itself.
So it's not something you could do citywide, clearly, but you could designate a smaller area.
Yeah, I'll find the article that it talked about it, but it was a very, very specific footprint so that people who lived there also were not compelled to sell because of all of the investors that come in. And they were talking about, it wasn't even so much about the gentrification of an area. It was more about the stability of the area. And it was a very interesting, thoughtful presentation and acceptance by the county that it was in. I will find it and I will make sure that the city commission gets it.
If your goal is affordability,
well, that's not going to help.
Airbnb's not helping.
Not at all. Yeah. And we do have an affordability issue here, regardless of what the city or county say.
Seems like everywhere.
It is everywhere, but I feel like in areas like Martin County, we have because we have such a large retired population and a lot of professionals, it skews the demographics of what our median and mean incomes are. And it definitely puts, I think, some people at a disadvantage because there should be affordable housing. So we can talk about affordable housing and accountability and transparency. If we take...
that's kind of your world right there.
I know, right?
One big bundle.
Right. Wrap it all up. If you look at what happened with Bridgeview, now Indigo of Stuart.
You got to tell people where it is.
So Bridgeview, Indigo of Stuart, is at the base of the Veterans Bridge, technically in the city of Stuart, though it was annexed in. It's across from the Kiplinger Preserve on the one side and the Martin Clinic on the other corner. And then I think there's a gas station catty corner to it. But it's at the base of the Veterans Bridge, and it was actually annexed into the city of Stuart to be developed. And part of their presentation and part of what they got approved for their greater density was that they were going to offer, quote unquote, attainable housing, because the city of Stuart said nothing is affordable in their code. They call it attainable. So they were going to offer 10%.
I think they sent that away to the state or something, and the state turned around and said you couldn't define it as affordable in your comp plan. They tried.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It didn't work out somehow.
Yeah. But whatever moniker we're using to identify it, affordable, attain. If you can't afford it, you can't attain it. That's my theory. But
fair enough.
If you have 10% attainable housing, that we will approve your greater density that you're asking for. And so, of course, the developer said yes. And needless to say, there are no units that are priced. There's no application for people to apply. There's no reporting that's required to the city of Stuart.
And there's nobody at the city to even follow up on it, really.
Right. There's not. So why would you approve something? I mean, I guess you're doing it basically on the honor system.
No, you're doing it to virtue signal affordable housing.
I agree. But if you don't...
For political purposes.
Right.
If you have no intention on following up with it in a real way.
Right. And I mean, I'm kind of a brat, so I called to ask how I could apply for it. And the woman with whom I spoke said, well, we don't have an application for that. So again, it goes back to that transparency, accountability piece. Why are we approving things to supposedly help people stay here, live here, afford to live here, if we're not following through and making sure that that exists? What's the point? So now the developer makes more money.
Yes.
Because they have more units that they can advertise and rent out.
100%. Yeah, it's you and I have both talked about this, but the affordable housing thing is a bit of a scam.
Oh, for sure. And the Live Local Act saying that they're going to have affordable housing is another red herring.
You can only create more density. You can't make it more affordable here.
Right. Yeah. And so, but it goes back to that whole ethics accountability piece and where the commissions have a responsibility, because if we're not doing what say we're going to do, then why even do it? I mean, why not just let everybody claim property rights and just build whatever they want? And then
that's how the city started.
I'm aware.
Right. Like back in the day, there was no land use or zoning.
Right.
But you also didn't have international development groups and hedge funds.
Right. Right. Buying property and coming in and building developments.
It was local people that lived here and worked here. And
right.
It took days to get anywhere else by boat or train. And
right.
Everybody here that built something was sort of in this perfect little bubble for their needs and use.
Right. But and that's one of the things that, if we're going to talk about the Martin County difference, if we're going to use that as our catch-all phrase for how great we are, if we're really no different. I think we're just slower getting there than the counties to the north and south of us that have had such massive growth so quickly. And now we're dealing with the fallouts of so much traffic and there's nowhere for the stormwater to go. And they're dealing with things like sinkholes. And I mean, it's a real problem. And, one of the great things about where we are is we have a chance to learn from the mistakes of others and learn like what's happening down in Miami. There's just, with all of when things happen so quickly and they happen in a silo, and again, there's no accountability piece of it, and we're not looking at what happens next. Everything is just, sure, you want to build that? Staff recommends, and so the commission votes for it. And then it leaves us, I think, at a deficit because now we're scrambling to fit all these pieces in. And I mean, even if you look at what's happening with the urban service boundary at the county, not to pick up solely on the Stewart, when you leapfrog and you create these development opportunities where now all of a sudden you have these gaps in basically services that are provided by the county, now we have to literally fill in and create an opportunity for people to fill in literally on this land between point A and point B as we've leapfrogged to create this new development. We're not looking at what happens next. It's just the developer wants it, the commission votes, it's a simple majority, and then what?
It seems like with regard to the county, that's been our dysfunction for a long time, is putting in a community, you don't have the infrastructure to get there. And then over time, the county ends up being on the hook for the infrastructure to said community. Right. Yeah. And you keep doing this and taxes have to go up because how do you keep paying for this infrastructure? And you don't make the developer do it.
Well, and there are some counties that do make the developer do it. They basically put into a fund where they create a new school. They create better roadways. They create stormwater management. It is, I mean, if you look at are you familiar with Babcock Ranch out on the west coast of Florida? So when Hurricane, Ian came through last? We've had so many hurricanes lately.
One of them.
One of
Big
the larger
storm, bad.
ones. They were one of the few communities that remained intact. Pretty sure it was Ian because it went right by Fort Myers.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Because that community, when it was built with the wherewithal. The houses are built higher than the roads, but not to the detriment of their neighbors. They have a requirement that wetlands stay intact. You want to build a house, you build around it. You absolutely do not encroach and fill in a wetland.
Imagine that.
What a novel idea, right? All of their power lines are underground. Like, this community is a newer community, but it was so thoughtfully planned, and they're on a majority solar. So thoughtfully planned and so thoughtfully laid out in a way that nobody is negatively impacted by it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the only community when Hurricane Ian came through that remained relatively intact.
There you go.
Instead of this piecemealing that we're doing, trying to figure out how do we get a fire station out now in West Martin County, because we just approved 4 rural lifestyle developments that probably should not have been approved.
Tell me more about that.
About rural lifestyle?
Yeah, because you've been all over that.
Yeah, I helped Donna Melzer with her case against Becker in Discovery and the B14 project that they were doing. I feel rural lifestyle. It's a misnomer.
Yeah, for people who don't know, talk about it.
Yeah, so rural lifestyle is something that the Martin County Commission decided would be a good idea through a text amendment, which was the first step in approving this. And it's an opportunity for people who have 1,000 contiguous acres to develop parcels where theoretically nobody should have a house that's on anything smaller than 20 acres. But then there's a lot of caveats like, oh, if you'd like to build a golf course, then you can also build a guest house on the golf course. And that doesn't count towards density. And you can have 1 guest house per 18 holes, or one guest house per hole up to 18 holes. So that's 18 houses with densities of transient people coming through. And I don't mean transient like they're homeless. I mean transient like they're coming to visit. So basically like an Airbnb in theory. But you can also have employee dormitories on there. It's a very interesting proposal, but most interesting is back in 2009 and in 2010, a lot of the developers that you're seeing now, this was a long wait for them, but they applied for this back in 2009 and 2010. I think they were just waiting for the right commission to be here to basically approve absolutely everything that they're asking for.
Trying to find a map of it.
Of the rural lifestyle. I'm sure if you look up story, it will be there.
I wonder how that's going to go. What do you think?
How the development's going to go? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. What's been approved, I'm not sure is what will be built. And I'm a little nervous that they may come in and ask for greater density as infrastructure is created. I think they may come in and ask for something different.
First one on Google, Sustainable Martin County Community.
I'm not buying it.
I did think it was interesting in that mailer that they sent out to everybody. It was like a physical booklet.
The first one that they sent?
Probably. It had Jackie Lippish, Brian Mast, all of these water people.
Oh, yeah.
And the way it looked, you could interpret it as...
Like it was endorsed.
That they were endorsing this project. That's kind of great. And then at the bottom, the very bottom in the small fine print, it said, this is not an endorsement of the story.
Right.
This is bad. Don't do that. Don't do that, guys.
I know.
This is too slimy.
But it goes back to the transparency piece. I mean, good for them for putting it on there, but shame on them for putting those pictures up.
Because they probably knew if they didn't put that, Brian would light them up.
Well, I mean, really, they shouldn't be using it. It probably came from a South Florida Water Management District picture, if it was the 2 of them in it.
No, it was like individual pictures of each person.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Looks sustainable to me.
I'm sure.
And even within that project, let me pull this up because I thought this was crazy. It looked like on their photo, when I first saw it, I said, oh, that's not too bad. That's not a lot of density, right? If you're kind of in here and you're in the middle part where that little crosshairs is and you see the gray, like that's not a lot. And then you start looking at it and we're like, oh, no, hold on. The yellow are buildings.
Right.
It's not just stuff over here. This is just the commercial stuff. These are all
platted for development.
These are all, oh no.
Yeah.
And you look around and it's just farms,
I know. And and the sad thing is, for the amount of time and effort that our county commission took and put into allowing something like this, and I'm sure it has its benefits. But for the amount of time and effort that they did that, to take all of this agricultural land,
Right.
the fact that they did not take the same amount of time and effort to find a way to make agriculture work, that's what's, and I can't fault the farmers for selling their land. I mean, they're getting much more than they would make, but once your agricultural land is gone, it's gone.
Right.
And you can't get it back. And no plot of, farming on your personal land will ever be something that is truly sustainable.
That's the word, is how can you really be a sustainable county? This is a little crunchy, but if you can't support the food needs,
Right.
you know.
And ultimately creating a food desert in some places, depending on what kind of groceries are available. But I mean, it just, again, going back to the whole ethics and accountability and transparency thing, there were no conversations that I could find that the county commission had with any of the farmers to say, what can we do? That all of this money that we're investing into this rural lifestyle, what can we do to help you? So interestingly, the county, one of the requirements of the rural lifestyle is you have to invest in something sustainable, right? Like a tree farm. Well, it's a for-profit tree farm.
Right.
You're not really investing in anything that is creating a sustainable environment. So it would have been wonderful if they're going to approve something like this, if they had taken the time to say, all right, these 5 farms that exist, invest in those. Invest in that so that we have beef that's readily available or vegetables that are readily available. And I realize there are a lot of nuances to farming that it's a very simplistic view.
Do you know how many doors units are a part of Story?
I don't off the top of my head, no.
I've heard things, but I wasn't sure if you had discovered what that is.
No.
I've heard it's like 5,000.
It probably is. I wouldn't be surprised. And then you figure it's approximately 2.8 persons per household on average.
Like
and so
14, 15.
Yeah. And then you have to figure for each household, it's at least, I think the calculation is 2.6 cars per household. So when you're looking at that development, it's not just, oh, isn't this great? And we're going to have a new place for people to live. They're
driving.
Yeah, and they have to drive from where they are. It doesn't, even if they build something that's a little mini town like what they're doing with Kiplinger's project.
Yeah.
It still doesn't.
4,000 doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still not going to fix the infrastructure issue. It's not going to fix the traffic issue.
That one's terrifying to me because you have one road.
Citrus.
Yeah. Well, now it's Newfield Parkway.
Right. Yeah.
But you got one road going through there.
Right.
And 12,000 people in this pipe dream that they're all just going to work and live here.
Right.
No, they're not.
Well, for everything that Brightline is professing, everybody's coming downtown.
Right. So between Costco and Brightline, Newfield and Story.
Right. It's a lot of people on our roadways.
I give up. This is going to be a very black-pilled episode between you and me.
I know. I'm going to go home and be depressed and my husband's going to say, what's wrong with you? I'm like, oh my God, I talked about the city of Stuart again. Oh my God.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean, all of these humans are going to be descending to come right to Brightline or to come get cheap toilet paper.
Right. Right. And unfortunately, again, because of how we plan and the lack of transparency, I know the city and the county meet, but decisions are not made holistically in a sense that the projects that the city of Stuart approves don't have to be approved by the county.
It's worse than that. It's worse, way worse than this. It's not even that they're not considered. I don't even know what the opposite of that would be, but the example would be Newfield. Right. Newfield, they got permission to do Newfield because Indiantown Incorporated.
Not sure how that makes sense, but yes.
They don't. The county does not consider the incorporated
right
into the overall stock of industrial, commercial, residential.
Right.
Once Indiantown Incorporated, it just became a blank spot on the map, and all of a sudden they had this huge vacancy of all these different land use types. So now we need to put a city inside of Palm City.
It's like a turducken, a city within a city.
Yeah. Yeah. Where if it really is holistic, because the roads are holistic,
right?
There's not a gate,
right?
When you leave Indiantown,
but that's like but that's like the GIS map after the last storm. Kudos to the county for putting it available that people could see when their trash pickup was going to be. To your point, there was a literal blackout, a black hole on the GIS map for the county for the city of Stuart. So our trash sat out there. And if the county is advertising like, hey, check your date, know when your pickup is, make sure all of your debris is by the side of the road. And yet, to your point, you look at the city of Stuart and there's a big black hole with no information. Like, why is something as simple as a GIS map? And for those who are listening, it's basically a map that tells you what's where and what's happening. And are you in a flood zone? Are you, whose district are you in for, your county commission, et cetera. There's literally a map and the city of Stuart was blacked out. So it just goes to reinforce your point. There's no reason that these things should not all be working symbiotically and in a way that makes a little more sense.
It just shows you what's relevant to government,
right?
Which is, once it's not on the tax rolls, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yet I pay city and county taxes.
Right. From the county standpoint, oh, you're off the tax rolls? Well,
right.
Now there's that vacancy there. But you should have some sort of holistic consideration for nothing else, traffic.
Agreed.
Traffic should have its own unified, observable impact from what the development is.
But that goes back to the beginning of our conversation where we're talking about developments and staff approves. Because staff cannot say there are 4 other developments in the application pipeline right now, and you're approving this will have this impact. If all 4 get approved and we're not approving for maximum density, but you're approving this project for this particular developer, we're not looking at we're not accountable to our citizens because we are creating a conundrum where once all these developments come online, what happens?
But that's another one, is I've never one time seen a traffic study come back where the traffic implications are an issue.
Never.
This will not
no.
seriously impact the traffic here.
Right.
Really? Are you sure it doesn't? Are you gaslighting me? Like, I'm pretty sure it is. Like, nope. Have that way, the hours and the peak and all the math.
Right.
I won't say names of traffic consultants, but it's always the same thing.
Absolutely it is. And it's always the same consultant, or more often than not the same consultant. But it's frustrating because, again, that's that accountability piece and that transparency piece. And I understand. And then it goes back to somebody saying, but it's developer rights. It's like this weird vicious circle. And I get that you can't penalize a developer for other things that are potentially happening. But that's where it becomes the due diligence of the staff for the county and the city to be very forthcoming and very honest and transparent about, if you approve this, this is what else could happen. And until that certificate of occupancy is issued, that's their caveat. But nobody lives there yet. Well, I understand that nobody lives there yet, but you approved it. Somebody will live there.
Yes.
So why are we approving things without knowing? You know it's going to get developed. Why are we approving things without the thought of what happens next?
Because the people that sit those 5 butts and seats set the tone.
Absolutely.
So if we're dancing, the 5 seats are the ones who are leading the dance, and staff and everybody else is following.
Right.
Because everybody wants it to be smooth.
Right. Nobody ever wants to be the bad guy.
Right.
But again, it goes back to the staff presentation.
If you got 5 people up there that are going to ask questions and be critical, it's not going to get to that even. So it's always going to come down to the 5 butts and seats.
Right.
And that comes down to elections and campaign finance.
Right. Whole separate issue.
But kind of the same thing, right?
Absolutely
the
same
war
thing.
is the elections.
Right. And who is supporting people and who is financially supporting people. And again, it all comes back to ethics, transparency, and accountability, right? So if you run on something and you say you're going to do something, people are going to hold you to it. And
I
if
sure
they don't
hope
hold
so.
you to it,
I sure hope so.
hope what?
That people do.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I've been seeing some of this more recently.
Yeah.
Where the campaign didn't match the behavior.
Right. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2026. I think, for all that happened with my court case and the other court cases that didn't make it as far as mine, I am weirdly grateful that people are paying more attention.
It all happens for a reason.
Well, I'm not sure I buy that, but
listen to me. Costco as painful as it is, like I don't want all those apartments there, and I think the traffic's going to be a nightmare. I don't think it should have been there.
It should have been out in Palm City
Put it
where
out,
it originally was
Palm City
planned.
or by
Yeah.
95. You know,
Yeah.
that was the consensus in talking to other people too. But out of that whole situation, something changed locally. People
Right.
got very involved and started paying attention. New people started running. There was a challenge to that 5-0, 5-0, 5-0, 5-0. So maybe with Brightline, it's the same thing. I don't know. But these ones where you take a loss, the hotel at, coming on to Colorado,
Yeah.
that was a huge loss to me. That one hurt.
Well, but again, it goes back to the transparency thing. So, and who's delivering the message. So I don't know how much time we have. If this
You got
is
as much
appropriate.
time as you want.
Okay.
Yeah, you talk.
I can talk for hours. So
You talk.
good luck.
Yeah.
So with my case, right, I was accused of so many things. I mean, you've been subject to things that are probably not true, people are saying.
I'm starting to enjoy it.
In a weird way, it becomes like this weird, like I'm enjoying the pain, but on the flip side,
It only really hurts if you're guilty of it.
Agreed.
And then it's like, I got to be better.
Or until you get a death threat. I mean, then it's a different.
We have people driving by our house and being weird, but I haven't got any overt death threats
Oh
yet.
yeah, those are fun.
Yeah.
When you have the chief of police like texting him like, "Hey, I got another one." Like, crap. But when people were saying things, and this is where I think there's a responsibility of the commission and staff, and I can say this from personal experience. When people were saying, "Oh, she's paid by Publix," I wish I was paid by Publix. That would have cut off so much of my legal bill. I mean, thank you, Publix, that I did not get any money from. Or the accusations of, and you've dealt with it, and I know others have dealt with it. I'm not alone, but just when you know things are not true, and yet you don't address, this is an ethical issue for me. If you don't address the things that are not true by saying, I know Robin, she is not getting paid by Publix. Yet not one commissioner, when I emailed them to say, can you just make a public statement?
The death threats are bad. Or
death threats
you
are
said something
bad.
like that. Yeah, death threats.
Because when a previous commissioner was, somebody said we should tar and feather him over the Costco thing. And the sheriff, Johnny on the spot, oh my gosh, we cannot use that kind of language. It is hurtful
Really?
and it is terrible. Oh, there was a whole newspaper article. The city of Stuart, their PR team was on it. There was a whole article in the newspaper.
This is during Costco?
All during Costco.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I got my death threats and I said, kudos to you for not encouraging violence and discouraging violence.
My turn.
I
Yeah.
would like you to say the same for people who are not commissioners, because I got a literal death threat. He got tarred and feathered. Like, there's a distinct difference. I'm sorry. And I was told I was placated at best. First, I was not acknowledged, and then I was placated. And it has been, I mean, I've gotten more than one, and I shouldn't have to keep asking, can you please make a statement to say she's not paid by by the competition. She's, like, there are certain things that you can just say undoubtedly are true or are not true.
Maybe sell out for Whole Foods, but certainly
No,
not
but
Publix.
I totally would for either Aldi or Harris Teeter. That's my new favorite. But
Okay.
yeah, but not for Publix.
No.
But it's just the whole point that it goes back to that ethical thing, right? So nobody at the city could be bothered. And and there's, again, I'm not the only example of that. If you look at just what happened with the court case, this needs to be an episode with Karen Hall. Like,
I saw you post about that, so I'm curious how that all plays out.
yeah. So for those who don't know, Karen Hall's property was, she was told they had to clean it up. It is a long drawn out thing. I wrote about it on my website on Martin County Press, but she has been fighting the city, and how easy it would have been for the city to say, let me help you and let me not say disparaging things about you so that we can resolve this. So here we are, like, started in 2009.
Yeah, it's a saga that's been going on forever.
Yeah. And it's just the whole fact that if somebody had just bothered to do the ethical thing, she wouldn't be in the position she's in, and the city wouldn't still have a pending lawsuit. It's interesting to me how we pick and choose what deserves our attention for ethical behavior and what or if they were transparent about any of it, or if there was any accountability for any of it. Like, it's unfortunately all part of the same. And even with my court case, talking about ethics and transparency, I don't know what his title is, but Paul Nicoletti.
Yeah, he was like the interim.
He was the
city
interim,
attorney.
yeah. And so when my court case was before the commission for discussion and we were trying to come to some sort of settlement, somebody leaked settlement talks and a blogger posted about them. And only when it was brought to their attention by the developer, who said they were unhappy about the fact that it was being made public, did the blogger take it down. And I was told in no uncertain terms, I'm going to look into this. We are going to find out who breached this confidentiality, and it is an issue, and we will not tolerate it. Well, that was 2 years ago, and I have sent multiple emails saying, hey, did you find out who did this yet? And yet, silence, absolute silence. So again, we pick and choose kind of what we determine is permissible.
There is an interesting thing happening. Trying to think of how to frame this. Local, but even more macro, bigger picture. It seems like a shift towards more of the transparency, more accountability, and less of the good old boys club protectionism thing.
One could hope.
It feels that way.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I don't feel it. But I'm not part of the good old boys club, so I don't feel disenfranchised or like, anything's threatened. But
there's always a layer of separation because you have who's, at work every day with each other, staff, and then the commissioners come in and I bother them all. And
right.
Where are we at? What's going on? And so there's always going to be some amount of our team.
Sure.
Because you're physically in proximity to these people and have
right.
relationships with them. And then you upset somebody in the public and they come and like one guy today was making fun of me and my lack of expertise in land use and that I crack bones. I'm like, okay. There's always going to be that kind of a thing.
Sure.
But it does feel like more generally the protectionism is starting to come down and the doors are starting to open.
I hope you're right.
There's some dissolving of that.
Yeah, I hope you're right.
Maybe because I'm in the middle of it, it feels like, I don't know, but I have noticed that.
Well, but you also have an interesting perspective because of where you sit literally and figuratively. And so your experience with staff, I've had people call me and say, do you know so-and-so on the staff just hates you? I'm like, well, that's interesting because I've never talked to so-and-so on the staff. It's interesting that they have an opinion about me, but there you go. But I hope that's true.
To that point, I've come to believe this. People don't hate you or me.
Oh.
Because they don't know you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Your husband knows you. Your friends know you. Like my wife, my friend, they know me.
Right.
People hate what you represent to them.
Right.
You're bad for their development business. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
You represent something, I see this up the chain with politicians. You see what they put out about themselves and their brand.
Yeah, but
but you don't really know people.
I agree. But it just, again, it's
personally.
It's that whole ethical behavior. Like if I worked at the city or the county and I heard somebody saying something about somebody that I knew inherently was not true, it is in my DNA to say to them, I'm sorry, but you don't know what you're talking about. Can I ask why you have that opinion? And then gently correct them in a way that makes them realize that maybe what you've heard is not accurate. But again, that's me. And I unfortunately hold people to the same standard. Or maybe I shouldn't, but I do because I want everybody should be treated in a way that is, again, it all comes back to that same piece for me, that ethical behavior, that accountability, and that transparency. You should never not know where somebody stands.
It gets tribal, right?
Absolutely. That's a good way to describe it.
It gets real tribal. And
Yeah.
if it feels like you're not on my team, if you're the other,
Right.
there's not as much grace.
No.
You can almost say the same thing and be on the other team. Oh yeah. Well, that's
Yeah, but
that guy said it.
Right. So therefore,
they're on the enemy's team. They're
Right.
team blue and we're red.
Right. So therefore,
Right.
yeah. But it's unfortunate because again, we're going back to what we talked about earlier. Like the arguments are not logical; they're emotional.
True.
They are not founded in anything except somebody told me. There's no accountability for really who is coming forward to say things that may or may not be accurate. If I'm against something, if I'm for something, why am I not hearing that, when they say things like, oh, like going back to Brightline, all these yellow shirts show up. That's great. I'm happy for you. Visually, you've created a representation, but you are not representative of the entire community.
Correct.
And so when commissioners and staff are saying things to the press, like TC Palm saying things like, supporters of Brightline were in attendance. Well, that's great. What about all the emails for the people who could not be in attendance? Mm-hmm. Like that's the kind of stuff that bothers me when we have a lack of transparency.
And it's something I try not to use as a crowbar or a hammer, but having gone door to door, it's something that I can sort of trump card and throw, because I am one of the few people who have done it. Right. It can seem like when you're in that room, half the people are yellow shirts and half but when you go door to door,
right,
there's a large silent majority of people who just want this place to be what it is.
Right.
And they just want people that will show up. They do their part and vote, but they don't want to be involved in it.
Right.
And if you'll advocate you'll make sure that my taxes aren't going to go up. You'll do everything humanly possible to stop discharges, and then don't overdevelop this place because the traffic sucks. Right. That's it in a nutshell. Right. And so kind of everything that you're doing should be filtered through that. And if it doesn't match up with that, then no.
And not under the guise of a threat.
Right.
Right. Like it shouldn't be, I'm going to sue you over this. Yeah. Like everything is so litigious. And instead of it just being a conversation, like this is what's permitted, this is what's not permitted.
I noticed that with the Brightline conversation and now with the zip. It's just everything's going to sue you.
Yeah. Well, been there, done that. I can give them some advice if I need it.
Yeah. Where, the people who, whether it's county or city, have clearly told you what they want. They had very distinct options.
Right.
People campaigned on very different platforms, and they picked a certain thing.
Or
how do you not deliver that to your customer?
Right.
How could you point to anything else?
Or you assume positive intent that if somebody said they were going to honor their agreement, that they would.
Right.
So even if Brightline does come up, it's a little bit different of an equitable distribution of who's responsible for it versus now it is solely the responsibility of taxpayers. But again, a separate conversation.
That's been wild to watch that evolve. That was hugely disappointing.
Yeah, I got a death threat over that one too. That was fun. Yeah. Well, it was more like a doxing than a death threat, but yeah. So 2 death threats and 1 doxing.
Just that the week before the new people are going to get sworn in, you make it impossible for them to demand that Brightline pays anything.
Right.
You completely remove their ability by altering the settlement agreement that's been fine for 5 or 6 years, but you pick this week before the new people come in to guarantee that they can't ask Brightline to pay a penny.
But it's like those rural lifestyle, right? But it's like those rural lifestyle applicants, right? From 2009 and 2010.
That's your final one of these to the voters.
Absolutely.
Who ousted you is okay, fine.
Right.
You don't want me here, then.
Right. But that's the same thing with the rural lifestyle people, the applicants that bided their time. And they waited till that right composition came, and they knew the minute that they could launch that request, and it got approved because they knew it would get approved. It's the same thing with Brightline. This was my last chance. I knew this was going to happen. I could see the writing on the wall. I'm going to lose 2 of my yes votes, so better to do it now than when I have a commission that has to deal with the fallout of what's being voted on.
Meanwhile, if you wanted to have a real application if you really wanted a station, okay, and you weren't caught up in all of that politics and drama, you would want to have a deal where Brightline's paying for something, the city's involved.
Right.
And up until that all happened, we were saying, let's just wait for the new commissioners to come in and let's figure it out.
Right.
That was the city's position in our meetings.
And it should have been, because the new commissioners are the ones dealing with the fallout of whatever's voted on.
Right. Let's all be on the same page with what we're going to have, since we're going to be the ones dealing with it for the next couple of years. Right.
Right.
No.
Right.
That's not allowed to happen.
Right.
So we're going to go unilaterally, and nobody really wants to pay for this at all, but we're going to send in a grant application. We'll max it at 15 million county exposure. But imagine being the person who reviews that grant application.
Especially knowing all the press that it's gotten here.
Right.
Yeah.
The county just went ahead and did this with people on the way out. It was a political move.
Right.
You only want to pay $15 million. What do you want us to be on the hook for? Everything else, you don't know what's going to cost. Okay.
Right.
Is Brightline's not paying anything? No.
Yeah.
No.
It's
And
such a
Coco
mess.
got their station grant canned.
Right.
And presumably Brightline helped them write that grant proposal.
Yeah. It's not going to go well.
I don't think so.
In many ways, not just because it may or may not be here, but because like everything else, if people were transparent about what was happening, the conversation could be more thoughtful, and we could really sit down and have a genuine conversation about who's paying for what, instead of it being this jockeying.
Yes, it was.
Of, if this, then this, but you don't know what the if is because nobody told you the if. You're only looking at the then. And it is put, I feel like the commission has been put, some of them knowingly, some of them unknowingly, at the city and at the county, in a very precarious position, because how do you really know what your constituents think? Because you're being bombarded with things that are not always true, in the sense of like the visual representation.
You got to go door to door, man. Even in
Yeah.
the county, you can't knock on all the doors, but you should take that time.
I can't tell you the last time a county had a town hall.
Just go knock on doors. I'm telling you, people will be so candid with you at their front door and appreciative.
Right.
It's like, oh, really? You're okay. Well, this is how I feel.
Right.
Actually, yeah, we were upset about them raising the taxes or whatever.
Yeah. I feel like Sean Reed had that experience, and he's talked about that when he went door to door, the things that he learned, which I think in the most wonderful way has helped inform and shape his decision making, because I think he is very cognizant, to your point, of what people told him when he knocked on all the doors. And he knocked on our door. And so,
Awesome.
I got to give that kid credit. Like, that's a lot of doors.
Yes, it is too.
I think he said he went through like 6 pairs of shoes or something in the
July,
time that he campaign.
In June, July,
When
August.
it's hot. Yeah. But I mean, it does help inform your decisions, and it does help you be a better commissioner. And the blowback is the blowback.
And then when 15 people come to the room with a certain color shirt on and demand a thing, you've got that whole cachet of interactions that's back here going, no, that's not happening.
Right.
I know that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are going to get me barbecued. I hear you.
Well,
But where are you? You're from Port St. Lucie? You don't even live here?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
hard.
you
How
live
do you
in
even know
Souls
who to
Point?
listen to? Yeah.
No.
I know. But it was the same thing. I can always go back to how I got involved in all of this with my Costco hearing. It's the exact same thing, right? Like the people who don't live here, who are not impacted by the day-to-day, who have an opinion, and they're
Right.
allowed to have an opinion, but your opinion should not carry more weight than somebody who lives here. And in there, again, the lack of transparency about who you are when you make this opinion known, it became such a web of, people saying things like, okay, so like you said, like you don't live here. Okay, but I get you work in Stewart. All right, you can have an opinion. Or are you an investor? Or are you a shareholder in Costco? Are you like, there's so many questions that should have been asked when you're giving somebody credence for their opinion. What's in it for you? And what do you get out of it? And again, it's that whole
And there's
transparency
levels,
piece.
right?
Right.
It's not just, it is important that you live and work here, that you may own a business, but the priorities of safety,
Right.
like the ability to drive safely.
Right.
Okay. When I'm walking my kids through my neighborhood, my little kids,
Right.
they're on their bikes and I'm stressed because the Uber is going to come ripping through
Right.
down Madison. We're just trying to walk in our neighborhood,
Right.
in our single family home neighborhood
Right.
and enjoy a walk
Right.
where my 6'5", 3, and my wife's carrying the 1-year-old, and that should be able to be safe.
Right.
And I have to worry. I got to worry about Ubers ripping through and people, cutting through streets and trying to get. And what happens when there's a new development or Brightline?
Yeah.
And now I got more Ubers. That's a consideration. Traffic, safety. Yeah, it's important if you own a business, right? Your ability to make money for sure. But what about car accidents
Well, it depends. Like we said, it depends on who's writing the report.
and that never somehow makes it.
Yeah.
It never.
Because
It's always a financial impact. It's
Yeah.
always
But that's conflict doesn't need to be, I disagree with you. Conflict needs to be healthy.
Weigh it out
And have a conversation. And we are seriously lacking that, I think, on so many levels, unfortunately.
To your point, I appreciate Sean, because Sean Reed is digging up details, information, facts.
And sharing it in a very thoughtful way that is, I mean, I was a little nervous the first meeting when he started to say something, because I was like, I don't think Sean knew what he got into. But to his credit, he knew exactly what he got into.
I made a bit of a mess for him, right, because of Brightline. Brightline had to be handled on that first meeting that they came in.
Yeah.
Which, credit to Sean and Laura, that kind of situation to be thrown into is a complete nightmare. You want to have 2 or 3 meetings to just be in that seat and figure out even how this all works.
Right.
And their first meeting is half the room's in yellow shirts. There's 3 different news organizations with cameras.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
And I'm picking fights on that because they forced Brightline through.
Right.
Just like the county did.
Yeah.
The meeting before on the way out.
Right.
They didn't know they were on the way out, but they still forced it through.
Right. But
so we had to rescind it.
If city staff was a little bit more transparent with the commission and with the constituents about what was coming up for a vote or a conversation.
I think there's a bit of hubris. I know there's hubris, right? There was not the perception that I see this for 2 years, right? When we did the zoning in progress 2 years ago, I said, you don't understand. I've been to all these doors. I'm telling you, this is how people feel. Okay, Chris.
Yeah.
That's just Facebook.
Right.
Those are just your friends. Like, no, listen to me. I'm telling you, it's normal people. It's not just my friends.
Right.
No. And so this hubris builds that their little network of friends, that the people that they talk to represents the overall constituency. And nobody thought that Sean and Laura had a chance to win.
I'm fully
in
aware.
the county.
Yeah.
Nobody thought Doug was going to lose in that ecosystem.
Right.
And then bang. Like, what?
Yeah.
So they just pushed that through, and there was it's not going to matter. We're not going to have to deal with the repercussions of this. And
right, because I won't be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I got to give Sean and Laura credit. I think when it comes to ethics and transparency and accountability, in my brief conversations with them, I feel like they're very aware of their responsibility.
Yep.
And I wish that in 2026 that we have some people that will run.
Yep.
That will carry that same thought forward. I think we're on the right path.
Yeah, we are.
I think we just need some people to kind of get us over the finish line. And the finish line is always a moving target, but I feel like we just need people who have the best interest of the community who, again, I don't have to agree with everything somebody says. I don't even have to like the person personally, but I have to respect them and I have to respect what they do for our community. That at the end of the day, if our community is not well, none of us are well.
True.
And so I'm very hopeful that as we move forward, that people who have wanted to get involved have maybe seen that it can happen. Like we're not stuck with the same status quo in the old guard, that maybe there are some people who will come forward and want to run and make a difference. I think we've got some really great people here who want to do the right thing. They just have been afraid to, or felt like, why bother?
When you see 5-0 votes,
right? Yeah.
On highly contentious issues,
absolutely,
it feels like it's a
losing battle.
I don't have a voice. There's no way I can't.
Right. So I'm hopeful that with the changes that have happened at the city and what hopefully we will see at the county, I'm hopeful that we have some people that maybe see this as an opportunity to get involved, even if they don't run. They just get involved, whether it's coming to meetings, making public comments, sending emails to their commissioners, learning more about the subjects, just being a little bit better informed. I think that can make all the difference in the world, because I think that's where we get a lot of this, I don't want to call it discontent because that's not a fair word, but like this divisive conversation is because, well, you're my friend and you're against it, so I'm going to be against it too, without knowing why they're against it. And I think like this Brightline thing, it has become an argument of what is best for the downtown businesses and what is best for the taxpayer. And the two are never going to meet. So having some people get involved who are looking at really all of the sides of everything and just that is my hope for this community, is that everybody's a little bit more
I mean,
accountable to each other
that's
and
been
accountable
your
to themselves.
contribution in what you're doing. So with Save Martin County,
Yep.
right? And now talk about your new
Oh, yeah. So Save Martin County was stewards advocating for a viable environment. It was a really long word for an acronym. But
I didn't realize that's what it was.
yeah, that's what it stood for. And it started because of my court case, because I was trying to find ways to educate people on what is a wetland? Why do you need them? What is stormwater mitigation? Because it was all new to me. And I thought, well, if it's new to me, it's got to be new to you.
Right. Unless you're involved in this whole world, you have no idea.
It is completely, it's like a whole other language trying to learn land development. And I know an iota of it compared to what really you need to know. So that's how all that started. But then what I've noticed is in our news reporting, especially with my case and with other cases that were happening, we have a robust breaking news site or availability with our news people. We don't have anybody who's following what happens what happens. Like, okay, you reported on this, now what?
Right. What's a follow-up?
What's the follow-up? And so again, back to that accountability and transparency piece, that's why I started it. So I incorporated, I take no money from subscriptions. Everything is free to read.
Do you have people that support you or something?
I set up, there's a newspaper in Tennessee called the Tennessee Holler, who I modeled my donation platform after. They don't take any money for sponsorships or any money for ads. And if you want to basically, they call it like buy me a coffee.
Nice.
So I set it up. You can donate through my site, but no advertisements, no subscriptions, because I don't want to ever be accused of being beholden to anybody for any of their sponsorship or their ability to write an op-ed or their ability to have any influence over what my opinion might be. So very factual, just here's the story that's happening. I've had the chance to go up to federal court to watch a case up there. That was interesting, going through a metal detector and then having to get to where I needed to be.
Because you got your legit press credentials.
I did get them.
Yeah.
I was very excited
I saw
about that.
that.
I didn't have them that day, though, and they didn't really care, to be totally honest. But
But you cared. You had them.
I did. I was like, look at me. I got a shiny new badge. And
That's
they were
awesome,
like, that's great. So I did go up to federal court, and I'll be following that case. That was a local, huge case for us. When you have an FBI raid in your community, that's a big freaking deal. And yet, crickets. And then we've got a couple other big cases that are coming and that I'm trying to keep an eye on and report on things. But it's a new project for me, so I'm trying to learn how to be a journalist. If anybody would like to help.
If there's
and
any
not
journalists.
offer criticism, but offer critiques. I'm always open to hearing about it because I'm trying to be very objective and not let any of my personal opinions ever get in the way.
Impossible.
I know, but I've done a good job so far.
I think so.
Yeah. But I'm excited about it because I think it's a chance for
I embrace
people.
my bias.
I do when it's not this.
True.
Because
You
this-
are. Yeah.
I can separate the two because I think in news reporting, I think you can have an opinion, but you can't be biased. And so I'm doing my best to make sure that everything is backed up by, public records, documented facts, court dockets. There's nothing that I'm providing that is.
So you do deep dive.
Yeah. And I want people to understand why they're reading it. The whole reason it was started was because we have content. We have no context. And so that's
pretty good.
It's aspirational, if nothing else.
Let's go back.
But it's something that I'm excited to do. I've only written a couple of stories, but there's a couple that I'm working on that I think will be of great interest to the community. And so I encourage them to subscribe, but also we've got some great breaking news sites here and they should definitely keep up with those. That's not what this is.
What do you got brewing?
There may be somebody who ran for county commission or city commission who maybe didn't fully fill out their expense reports, and I'm trying to figure out why. I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay. if you want to go more specific, I'm excited to hear what you say.
I'm happy to come back once I confirm some things. Right now it's speculation, but the fact is reports were not properly filled out, and that is indisputable. And you have to wonder why. And then a couple other things are local cases where some accusations were made. They're in court right now, but really trying to figure out why the case is even happening and how did we even get here. I think it's a big story, and I think there's been a disservice on who's involved and why has it not been talked about. But there's a couple like that here. Martin County is shady. In the most wonderful, fun way.
The longer I'm involved in this whole thing, it is eye-opening.
It is. And you don't know what you don't know. And I'm finding things I don't know that I always thought I knew. But it's been very interesting.
I'm trying to think of the exact quote, but evil persists when good men stay silent or something like this. We need more high caliber human beings.
Well, I think just people who are educated. I mean, if you want to be
good people,
willfully ignorant, that's a choice. But I think we can't afford to be that. I think in a lot of ways that's way bigger than my little pet project. But I think
what you're doing is incredibly important because it's just more information. It's more context. It's more a different opinion. It's not just. Yeah, I would love to know the metrics of how many people, for instance, click on save, versus even a TC Palm article anymore.
Yeah, I think, people are we're in such a society where everything is so fast and information comes at you so fast. It's difficult. I joined TikTok, believe it or not, to make a video. I did. I did it. It's too late. I did it. But I did it so that I could promote this website. And I was amazed at how many people watch those videos. Like a random video of somebody you don't know.
It'll go viral.
Yeah, it's interesting though. So because traditional news is no longer
that's what I'm saying.
The thing, right? And so it's a learning curve for me. How do you create content that people want to consume, but while keeping it important? Because
I think it's
important.
Good you have layers, right? You have save is more superficial, but right now, bang, and then you have these deep dives. Maybe you can look at what people find the most interesting in what you're doing and then go deeper. Yeah.
And it's interesting when I post about certain people, it definitely gets different responses than others do. Things that I think are so important, like, let's talk about wetland mitigation. Everybody's like, nah, whatever.
You have to have context of
what
wetlands are threatened.
Right. And even then, it's just not sexy, right? Like, it's a wetland, big deal. But it is a big deal and it matters. And hopefully, to your point, it's two different conversations. But I am excited about what I'm doing. It's been...
Anything that informs people about agenda items and what's happening before the vote.
Right.
Because there's not enough of that.
Yeah. Well, that's mainly on the Save Facebook page.
Right.
Yeah. And
it's very valuable.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I try to do it in a way that I know
because we need a little network of people who are paying attention and know context around what,
Yeah.
Including your commissioners.
Yeah. And people need to be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work with that.
Thanks.
Yeah. I haven't dug in as much with the press one, but I do appreciate seeing the post from Save.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. The things on Martin County Press are more legal news related. The stuff on the Save Facebook page is more what's happening at the next commission meeting. Here's what you need to know, or pay attention to these donations.
I think you should put your face on it. I think you should make it more your face.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Make it more personal. Still call it Save, but have it be you.
But I went through all the trouble of getting a logo.
True. Put it on a t-shirt.
I could. I do have some good t-shirts.
Yeah, you do too. The cows, right? What is it? The cow. Yeah. More cows, less condos.
More cows, less condos.
There you go.
Yep.
But what do you think is the future for you besides the press? Martin County Press?
I don't know. Since getting blackballed in Martin County.
Are you blackballed?
Oh, for sure.
How are you blackballed?
It's a whole other conversation that we can have. I can bring you all of the articles that disparaged my name.
Yeah, but that's not. You can still do whatever you want, right?
Well, that's why I started this newspaper.
Because
there are stories to tell, and I love that I have the opportunity to tell them. So, but I don't know what's next. I'm trying to figure that out now that elections are done at the local and state and national level. I don't know, just kind of see how things shake out and we'll see what happens, but always vested in what's happening here in Martin County and definitely involved. Just don't know what capacity that will look like yet.
Well, now's the time to prepare for the next election. cycle.
Well, now's the
It's
time
only
for
2 years
people
away.
to, yeah, but now's the time for people to decide if they're going to run. And hopefully we'll get,
So if somebody's
great
thinking about
candidates.
running, right, as somebody who's been involved in this for a couple rounds at least, right?
never run a campaign. I want to be very clear about that.
But in observing it,
Yeah. I feel like I'm like the consigliere for
Nice.
people when they need to have a conversation.
what,
I am taking Italian lessons. I'm doing this a lot.
when if somebody's thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
right, and they're, I want to talk to Robin. She seems like, you know, she could help me. When should they figure this out by? Pretty soon, right?
I mean, in my brief experience in this, I would say as soon as possible, because you have to really gauge the community if you're even a viable candidate.
Right.
And I hate to say it like that. Not everybody will make a good commissioner.
Right.
And so you've got to be able to withstand what's happening up at the dais.
And worst case scenario, you run against, in a three off race
Right.
with somebody who is a good challenger.
Right.
No, but there will be no names mentioned. But
Right.
geez,
I know.
don't
Kudos
do
to the Jensen Beach candidate who decided to withdraw so that
Respect.
focuses,
Yep.
the focus on one candidate could happen.
Yep.
That was
No ego.
brave, no ego.
Yeah, very humble.
Yeah. But I think somebody just has to decide if they can withstand what's happening. They also have to decide if they have the time commitment, because it's not, you don't just show up. I mean, you're
It's more consuming, and this is just in the city. The county's probably way worse.
Yeah.
But it's more consuming than my business.
I'm sure. I mean, you have
If
to
you
be
do
able to
it
respond to
right-
constituents.
Right, and that's why. And
Yeah.
there's even like unrelated city, like people
Yeah.
from the county ask me questions about how to get stuff done in the county. You know,
Right.
It's like, you're the point person that they think could help.
Right.
You best represent the person that
Yeah.
maybe could help,
Or the
somehow.
most approachable,
Right.
or maybe they've seen you do something. But yeah, it is a definite time commitment. And so I think between the time commitment, deciding if you're viable, I think knowing if you have the wherewithal to fundraise, because it's a necessary evil. Not that you need to raise a lot of money
Depends
if
on
you
the
do
race.
it right. But listen, I can say in the county, there was one candidate who raised considerably less than his opponent, and I don't think he lost because of that. I don't think it was due to fundraising. You can come up with creative ways to share your message. But you do have to fundraise because you have to register with the supervisor of elections. You have to pay for certain things. And so it's not a free, hey, I'd like to do it and, come vote for me. There are financial requirements. So I think the sooner the better, but I think just being excited about it and having somebody who is excited, I'm happy to talk to them. If I don't know the answer, I'll get them to the right person. I'm certainly not the be end all of campaign finance and or consulting. There are people who get paid for it. I
think
don't.
You're a good, ambassador for somebody who's more grassroots that might want to run, whether
Yeah.
they're red or blue. Like you represent, I think, the silent majority of slower growth, fiscal responsibility, environmentally
Right.
focused.
But I also have nothing, like if nobody's paying me, I have nothing to gain. Versus creating postcards that go out that may or may not be 100% accurate about my opponent. But
Sure.
I think there are some good people who do run campaigns around here.
All right, so let me show you the money.
Yeah.
Show me the money, right? So in the last run,
Mm-hmm.
Doug raised 169.
Right. Mostly from developers, FYI.
Eileen, who won, came up with almost 29.
Right.
Blake raised 81.
Mm-hmm.
Susan raised 84. Campy raised almost 100. And Mike Circus raised almost 12.
Right.
So that's a lot of money
It is a lot of money.
if you want to run for county.
It
And
is.
The city's probably between 10 and 30.
If that. I mean, realistically. But if you look at, for example, Eileen's donations versus Doug's donations, because I did.
Let's do it. We're here.
Doug's donations mostly came from developers.
Mhm.
They came from a lot of Chamber of Commerce related individuals, including the Jensen Beach Chamber of Commerce. A lot of his money came from people from outside of the state of Florida, not just Martin County, but the state of
And
Florida.
how would you characterize those donations then?
What do you mean?
Like the out-of-state ones. Who are these people?
Interestingly, most of them are connected to what is happening in Indiantown with Terra-Lago and the Garcia family. So the Kleppies, there's a couple others in there whose name escaped me at the moment, but they're all connected to the same companies.
Bob Raines is in there.
Yeah. He represents
Land use attorney. And then Creech. Creech is land use attorney.
Richard Creech, right. But there's a number of donations. I wrote about it on the SAVE website about the similarities between the donations between Ed Campy,
very similar,
Susan Gibbs Thomas, and Doug Smith. And it's almost like somebody went to somebody in Michigan one day and said, hey, I'm going to help this person. And could you write 3 checks for 3 different campaigns? They were all given on the same day by the same people. And there's multiple instances of that. So
Detroit, Michigan. Mm-hmm. What? $2,000 checks from Detroit, Palm Beach Gardens, New Jersey.
Yeah. So
Michigan. Yeah, here you go. Michigan.
Yeah. And I wrote about it because it's disconcerting to me
that
people are
who
influencing. Right. And who are they? Well, ends up they're all connected to or related to a development.
I think this is a really big deal.
It is.
And
it's not a campaign finance violation, just so people are clear. Like anybody can give money to anybody as long as you don't exceed the maximum amount that you're allowed to give. If you give through a PAC, it has different requirements and allowances.
And $1,000 is the most you can give. And you're saying New Jersey 1,000, New Jersey 1,000, New Jersey 3 from the same.
Right. And you can have different businesses and be the same person. Mm-hmm. And that is also not a restriction. We have a couple local companies here that do that, where they give campaign contributions from their 9 different companies and then themselves individually. So it's not against the rules, but it's interesting. And that became my focus with
I think
SAVE.
you did a really good job with that because...
And we had city commissioners who were getting money from the same people.
It hit critical mass. Like this became something that people really cared about. And
they should care about.
Right. Which before, I don't know that people even knew that.
See what happens when I have a lot of time on my hands?
I know, you're very dangerous.
Social justice.
Yeah, you're kryptonite. Kryptonite for corruption? I don't know what you call this. It's just the club. There's a club and we're not in it.
I'm definitely not in it.
Weinberg, $500.
Yeah.
Yeah. Environmental consultant.
But it was interesting just because...
Just don't get us killed, okay?
Yeah, I'm doing my best.
Please.
But it goes back to the same thing that I keep saying when it came to campaign finances. This is not transparent. I mean, I know you have to file...
Hutchinson Shores, $1,000?
Oh, yeah. They're also where the Jensen Beach Chamber of Commerce meetings are. And they're connected to...
But they're on the TDC.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. We could get into it. We need to do a whole show just about campaign finance. But it's transparent because they have to report who gives them money.
Who's Michael Lanigan? I'm seeing a bunch of Lanigan on here. Michael Lanigan.
Yeah. Where
Joseph
is he from?
Lanigan, Gulfstream, Florida.
I will look up when I get home who he is because I remember looking at that name. I made a whole spreadsheet that I shared with people so people could see exactly who's connected to whom.
What you need is like a...
Oh, it was like a whiteboard. Yeah. Yeah. It was similar to that, but it was through spreadsheets with hyperlinks so that people could look at it visually. But it's transparent because people have to publish who gives to them. And technically it's ethical because you're not violating anything. But the accountability piece, who are you going to be responsible to as a commissioner?
Right.
Who are you going to...
This is who he's going to pick the phone up for.
Absolutely.
Right.
So when your donations are not mom and pop who live in Jensen Beach and that's where you're running, that gives me pause because why do you have $169,000 in donations from people, a majority of whom do not live here?
You know what's wild too is if you look at these donations, these were in October and November of 2023. Mm-hmm. $74,000 came in a year before the election.
You should look at the partner lists of those who also ran for re-election, like Ed Campy, like Ed Campy's list. You will see similar donations. Yeah. And they're not identical because Ed raised a little bit less money, but they're all, it's again, to whom are you accountable if you're taking money from people who are not like me?
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing if you're, we're all friends. It's a small town, small county. You're getting $200, $300 from your friends, maybe even $500, but you're getting these thousand, New Jersey.
Yeah.
It's icky.
And most of whom have a connection to Martin County that is not developed.
Did you dig into that? Where those New Jersey people were? And who are they? Who are these people?
There's a spreadsheet on my Facebook page. If you look
Developers?
at the save, most of them are, I itemize them by if they were developers, if they were, what was their industry, if they were realtors. I itemized everybody so that you knew exactly who was donating and why, or you could at least make an
and
inference.
what connection they had to potential projects, or if they owned anything around here,
or if they had a development application in, or if their cousin had a development application in, or if they had something that was pending.
That's icky to me.
Yeah.
Because that's direct conflict of interest. Like, how can you...
I mean, it's not, though.
I know, but it is.
I think you should have to disclose if you took money from somebody when you vote, but the city had the same issue with the two commissioners who left. They got similar donations, albeit not nearly at the scale and level, but from the same people as what Doug Smith, Ed Campy, and Susan Gibbs Thomas did.
Same crew.
Same crew.
So you wonder how much of that is just similar friends?
Yeah. I wish we all had that friend. Or who coordinated that donation. That was my big question, was who coordinated this? Like, that takes an effort to go to get $5,000 per person, and you've got 20 people. Like, you're making a concerted effort to do this. It's not like somebody just didn't pick up a phone and say, oh, I've also got a buddy running who's got another buddy running, who's got another buddy running. So while you're stroking one check, just stroke 5. To me, that's just very intentional. Like, there's a reason that these developers are looking for certain commissioners to be in office.
You know what's cool, though? It didn't work.
It did not work.
You can raise $169,000 and lose
Yep.
against somebody who raised 28.
Yeah.
So people are finding out.
Yep.
The good old days where you could send out $160,000 worth of mailers to people and call the other person. What did they call Jackie? What did he say about Jackie Lippish? She was
I don't know, but can we talk about those mailers real quick before we wrap
up? A secret Democrat
Yeah.
that was going to destroy, I don't know, something. Yeah.
An environmentalist is environmentalist. It doesn't matter
Right.
their party affiliation. It bothers me so much. But
It did make me proud of the more informed electorate.
Right.
That doesn't work anymore.
Right. But real quick about those mailers before we wrap up.
Yeah.
So those mailers were done by Keep Martin Green.
Who is that?
So fun fact, Keep Martin Green was run by Ron Rose, who is
Ron Rose?
He is the executive director of the Jensen Beach Chamber of Commerce.
What?
Right, who has their meetings at Hutchinson Shores. And interestingly, he did a couple mailers. One was for Ed Campy, and people make money at this. This is what drives me nuts. He did one for Ed Campy, one for Doug Smith. He did a video for Doug Smith, and he did one for Susan Gibbs Thomas. And when he did the one for Ed Campy, the pictures that he put on the flyer were not even in the county. They were City of Stuart projects. And it just makes my eye twitch that somebody would be paid money and pay money. Like, they paid somebody to do this mailer. But somebody was paid money and said, this is a really good idea. And so they set up a PAC, a political action committee, to take in money to basically run these campaigns. And it just goes to show you that if you don't know what you don't know, and if we hadn't looked to see who was Keep Martin Green and figuring out that they were a PAC and where this money was coming from and who was running it.
How'd you figure that out?
Google is amazing.
Yes, it is.
It is. But there's, it's a convoluted web trying to find things. And I got to give Votewater credit. They did a great job with their Dirty Money series around the elections, talking about PACs and where money came from. And so if anybody's interested in just learning more about PACs and how they affect our elections, Votewater did an amazing job with their series. But you can find all of this information. You just have to know where to look. And
so what's Ron Rose's deal? He was, I'm just reading, he was the president of the BDB.
Mm-hmm. And he's the Jensen Beach Chamber executive director.
He went through the leadership program. That's like when you've been initiated into the chamber for real.
For real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been invited.
No. You get some sort of secret handshake and a weird tattoo.
I don't know. I was in a sorority. I feel like
Yeah.
if that didn't go well, this probably wouldn't either.
No.
But, yeah.
You have to pledge allegiance.
Yeah. But he, when he ran that pack, I think they did it. I don't think those three candidates realized the fight they would have. And I think this pack and this effort was a last minute scramble.
Yeah, it was.
To get votes that
Eileen came out hard on Facebook.
She did.
All
but
of a sudden, her
that's
ads
my point about the money. Like,
put that crew on their toes.
Absolutely.
And it was too late.
Yeah. But that's my point about the money. You need money to run a campaign, but you don't need $169,000 to run a campaign.
I wonder, though, how much of it was just pent-up frustration over Doug.
Well,
that if it was
sure
a tighter
there were a lot
race, you might have to come up with a closer.
I don't know. She did a good job. I mean, I went to one of her events. She did a good job networking, trying to meet people where they're at, getting in front of people just so she could introduce herself.
She's very well put together.
She is, absolutely.
Yeah, I think she'll do a really good job.
But she was very available, where if you wanted to hear Doug speak prior to the election, you had to go to very specific events.
Yeah, he wasn't at some of those things.
But also they were private functions that he attended. So if you wanted to hear him or speak with him, he
$500 check.
Maybe. I don't know. I didn't go. I wasn't invited. But Eileen went to people's communities, went to their houses. She did a really good job networking with people and having people introduce her. And I wouldn't have met her otherwise. But I mean, when I found out where she would be and it was a public place, I made sure that I got an invite and I went. And just so, because if I'm going to vote for you, I need to know who you are and what you stand for. Not just that I didn't care for Doug Smith, but I don't want to vote against somebody. I want to vote for somebody.
100%. That's awesome.
Yeah. So meeting her and getting to know her a little bit better was important. And I encouraged others to do the same. Like, I get you don't like Doug, but don't let this hate vote get us somebody who's no better. So let's go meet her. Let's see what she's about. And I think everybody really enjoyed her. Like, she's very adamant about who she is. She's very sure about, she'll tell you, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm going to figure it out. And she's not expected to know everything right off the bat. In
talking to her, it seems like she really just takes it all in. She really takes in, spits out the bones, and, but she listens.
From multiple people.
Listens to, she'll take it all in.
And I sat next to her at the last county meeting I attended. Not the one that was today, but last week when they were talking about Brightline and some other things.
Perfect.
And yeah, she was funny. I enjoyed
she gets
sitting
animated.
next to her.
Yeah,
huh? She
gets animated.
Well, and just funny to listen to her. Like, you excited about this? She's like, oh my God, what did I do? But
mistakes were made.
Yeah, but she was enjoying. Yeah. She was enjoying being there, and I know she's been to a couple city meetings where she's just there to take it in, kind of figure out what's happening, figure out how her constituents are affected, how she's affected, how her vote could be affected. I mean, I've got to give her credit. She's doing her due diligence for sure.
And also in talking to her, I get the sense that she really wants to champion the little guy.
It seems like it, yeah.
The chamber did not get her in that seat.
No.
Ron Rose did not get her in that seat.
The chamber, only one of their candidates that they endorsed won.
The union did not get her in that seat.
Yeah.
All of these heavy hitters that have previously been kingmakers did not put her in that seat. So she's listening to just us. Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
It's amazing. Yeah. Like I said, I have high hopes for the county commission coming in.
And, man, it would be tough to have spent that $169,000 and lose.
Right. That's like 2 annual salaries for some people.
But imagine if you could just bring how you vote closer to what people want.
Yeah.
If you could just come back home.
Yeah. But again,
you don't have to spend $170,000 and lose.
Right. Or ask for $170,000.
Right.
Yeah. Because at least, it wasn't his money. It was other people's who don't live here.
That huge disparity between what the average human being that lives here wants and then what we're doing, that's the problem.
Right.
If you could just drag that back over.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said before, I've got high hopes for things. I think things are headed in the right direction.
Don't approve a city inside of a city.
Right. It's a city turducken. I'm totally convinced. But I
Stuff
just
like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm hopeful that things will level out a little as the guard changes, and I'm hopeful that some accountability will take place, not even just for people, but for projects that have been approved.
Man. After the Brightline vote, 5-0, I don't know.
Well,
I'm curious to see, but I think it very well could be 3-2s and 4-1s.
Yeah, but I'm hopeful that people just at least start expressing themselves to our commissioners in a way that is not hateful, not terrible. Like, if you want to have these conversations with your friends, that's fine. There's a time and a place, but the way in which we approach arguments needs to be about logic, not about emotion. It needs to be, I go home, I write 7 drafts of what I'm ever going to say. And then I scream and I curse, and
You're
there's
It's
multiple
a better
4-letter words.
It's a better way.
Yeah, because I don't want to get up there and be like, and then you SOB, like, I don't want to do that, because then it nullifies my argument.
Right.
And so I want it to be something that's a little bit, at the end of the day, we all have to live here.
Right.
And it would be nice.
We're all neighbors.
Yeah. And it would be nice. So going back to where we started, right? The accountability to one another, transparency about why you are asking what you're asking for, and ethical behavior in the sense that you're not doing something behind somebody's back to get what you want. Like, there's no reason that things are happening the way that they're happening. It could be in a way that is just a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more pragmatic, a little less vitriolic, a little bit better for our community overall. There's a lot of things that we could be doing a lot better.
Are you ever going to run for anything? You thought about it for a second when I said it.
No,
I saw you.
I've thought about.
That wasn't a hard no.
No, it is a hard no. I've been asked, and I'd like to stay married. No, I'm just kidding.
He's awesome.
He is awesome.
He's the man.
He's great.
Yes.
No, I think right now my opportunity to educate and influence is better served where I'm at, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the elections happened because of me, because they didn't.
You played a part.
But the fact that I could share information in the way that I did, in the manner that I did, and that people read it.
Yeah.
I hope it helped. And I think it did.
It did.
And so, and there were others doing good work. I'm not trying to take credit for anything, but I feel like right now my place is to help educate people.
That's where you have the most.
And I don't think I could do
influence.
what I'm doing the way I would like to do it if I were to take an elected position. That's assuming I would win. I mean, good Lord, all these people who think I worked for Publix would probably vote against me, but who knows?
At least you'll be getting those $1,000 checks from Publix.
In Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lakeland? Where are they out of? I
don't even know. Wait, Lake Mary or Lakeland?
Something like
one
that.
of the two. Lake something.
The Publix vote.
See, I don't work there, so I don't know. People.
You do. I think you're hiding it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Secretly.
Yeah.
Yep. And Harris Teeter. I would totally work for Harris Teeter.
Who's Harris Teeter? Is that Publix?
No, they're a grocery store. We found them when we were in North Carolina because
you know a lot about grocery stores. This is a bad sign.
I eat a lot. That's really what it is. I like to coupon shop and I like to eat a lot. And so I visit everywhere I can. But Harris Teeter's got an amazing rewards program. And when we finally left to come back to Florida after our vacation, we saved 90 cents a gallon because we bought all of our groceries there. So shout out to Harris Teeter.
It feels like you're overcompensating for your Publix.
Maybe.
Ties.
No. Because I can never get a good deal at Publix.
True. We got to work on our produce, Publix.
Yeah. One step at a time.
Anything else?
No.
We've been going for an hour and a half.
I know. And I feel like people are going to tune out after 2 minutes, but oh well.
Nobody watches this anyway.
It's all bullshit. I know.
Yeah. But it's good. It's out there. If somebody wants to run or they're really interested in city or county politics, they'll watch it.
Okay.
Our little ecosystem does anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's all you can do.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll
sorry.
Do it again. You can keep me up on the loop.
Yeah.
What's brewing?
I think once my next story is published, I think I'd like to come in.
Yeah. Let's go.
You'll be the first.
Let's go.
That'll be interesting.
It'll be spicy. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're awesome.